or he left?
That he graduated boot camp in Chicago at the beginning of February. Year ago, 2 years ago, when there was that big Arctic storm, and they were like shutting the Midwest down. Yeah, we actually came home the day that started, so it was like -17 one day we were there. And being a California girl, I was not prepared. So
Crazy.
So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm just about to start the meeting.
Nice picture.
Everybody
Thank you.
can start. It's now live on YouTube.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting of the Livermore Amador Valley Transit Authority on today to order. It's February 1st, 2021 at 4 p.m. The rules for how to participate in this are under the COVID rules are posted on the agenda. And with that, could we have a roll call, please?
Director Brown,
Here.
Director Halbert,
Here.
Director Hernandez is.
I'm
he
here. I'm here.
Director Josie,
Here.
Director Kick. I don't see her yet join. Director Naren,
Here.
Chair Warner.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I see Director Kick has just joined us as well. You can add her to the roll, or you can want to call her and she can respond.
I can. She's connecting right now to audio. I'm just waiting for her to connect. Brittany Kick, we're doing roll call. Can you just say you're here?
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to open the meeting to the public. Do we have any members of the public wanting to comment?
So you didn't receive anything via email. However, there are 2 hands raised. The first one to go is Stephen Dunbar.
Okay.
Good evening, or good afternoon, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Hello, I'm speaking on very much on my own behalf, and my name is Stephen Dunbar. I'm a Livermore resident. You all know me. I provided an update via email as to what Mr. Tree and I have been working on over the last few months for your direction. It's been very fruitful. We've gotten a lot done. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to say thank you for all of that. There's more things to do. You know, we're all under a tricky time these days with COVID, and the future of transit is confusing, and it might change. But staff here has been really very pleasant to work with. So that's all I really had. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you. Do we have another member?
Yes, let me remove him from the screen. Hold on one moment. Okay, the next one is Teamsters Local 70.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm just here. I'd request that you all remove item 5D from the consent agenda, please. I spoke on it last time, and I'd like to speak on it again. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anyone else wish to speak?
Let me see. No, I do not see anybody else.
Okay, with that, I'll close the public forum. And with that, we're on to item 4.
Bear with me for a minute. I'm just trying to get him back over to the other area, and it's not allowing me to.
Something's gone wrong with my sound quality. So what was that request, to hold for a moment?
Yeah, I'm trying. Teamster Local 70 is still on here, and I'm trying to get them off the screen, but it's not allowing me to. Let me see what I can do here.
Okay.
Hopefully that fixed it. Hold on. You can proceed.
Okay. With that, I'd like to proceed to item 4, the January Tri-Valley Accessible Advisory Committee minutes. Who do we have to speak on that?
Herb is here. There you go.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes,
And my camera, Jennifer, you forgot that again. Anyways, let's see. I'm here to give the January minutes report for the TVAC report. Hope everyone had a nice holiday season and a eventful 21, we hope. But our meeting that we had in January on the 6th, the staff gave reports on the latest status about the paratransit operations RFP project that they're upgrading. I guess they're getting ready to change providers effectively in April after you approve it, when it gets changed. Then we also had a little update on the COVID-19 emergency service changes of the system involving the entire system for both paratransit and for fixed route. We also had an updated pilot program set up for the paratransit debit card, or parataxi, I mean. And they're getting ready for it to open that up. And we talked a little bit about it. And we made a couple of recommendations for the flyer to be revised to show different additional items that were kind of missed on it that should have been involved. Otherwise, then we did an update on the one-seat regional program that's involving County Connection. We got better clarification. There were some people, including me, that had some questions about how it was going to work. And so they gave a little more clarification on the update of it, of the procedure and the process. And then the Go Tri-Valley update regarding the Uber and the Lyft programs are now expanded to all 3 cities, which is good. The one thing I wanted to add regarding just to inform you, I'm working with, it's on the one-seat regional program. Currently, East Bay Paratransit isn't involved. And so what I'm doing on a side situation right now is I'm communicating with the East Bay Paratransit Advisory, SHRAC Advisory Committee, and I'm going to be attending their meeting tomorrow and encouraging them to endorse the idea of having East Bay Paratransit involved in this pilot program. Currently, they're not listed in it. All the other 3 county services is in West Tech, U, and County Connection. So I'm attempting to get East Bay Paratransit involved. And so I'm going to be working on that. Hopefully it gets done soon, but we'll see where it goes. So that's my report that I have for us. for you guys tonight, and I'll let you guys know the status of where I get with East Bay Paratransit. Anyone have any questions?
Well, thank you for the report, and thank you for what you're doing there. Any questions from the board for Mr. Hastings? Commissioner or board member Halbert? Did I
Not for
hear
me,
you?
thanks. None.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, with that, thank you, Herb, for that. And we'll move on to the consent agenda. Now, I've got a question on here. Do we also open public comment on this as well? I mean, I know we do on the council meetings. I don't remember us doing it on this, but we did have a request to look at item D, I believe, from the public. So what I would, okay, so first of all, I'll answer the question about, do we have public comment on this as well, since someone requested we pull one item for consideration?
So in essence, they've already given you public comment, but you should always, if there is someone that wants to comment on the consent calendar, they're certainly entitled to. In this situation, it's really a board member who would choose to pull something from the consent agenda. Given the request from the public, someone from the board may want to make that request. It's not up to a member of the public, though, to decide, what stays or goes from the consent calendar.
Mr. Chairman, I'll pull that item.
Okay, there we go. So can I have
Move the
a
balance of the consent calendar, if that's okay with you, and we can vote on that and then move on to that item.
great.
I'll
I was just
second
going to
that.
ask for that.
I'll
Do we have a
second
second?
Right here.
Okay. Okay, great. We have it moved and seconded. The consent agenda for A, B, and C. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Halbert,
Yes, just to confirm, that's without that item that I pulled, right?
Not D.
Yes, I said A, B, and C.
Very good.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Josie,
Yes.
Director Kitt,
Yes.
Director Narum,
Yes.
Chair Warner.
Yes.
Passes
Okay, with
unanimously.
that, it passes unanimously. Can we now open up the discussion on item D of the consent agenda? And Commissioner Howard, do you want to go first?
I'd just like to invite the member of the public to give their comments.
Okay. With that, I'll open public comment on item D.
You have Teamsters Local 70 that would like to speak.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Ask is unmuted.
All right, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
You're good.
All right, good afternoon, Rich Fierro here. Most of you know me. There's some new board members, so I, welcome. I just, so I met with Director Tree over this issue since the last time it came up on calendar. And I understand where the board is headed. I understand that, there's a chance for some significant cost savings. But really, what I wanted to hear from each of you is kind of what your thought is of this long term. It's supposed to be a pilot project. I think a couple of my concerns are the bid. It really isn't an apples to apples thing where I think there's some advantages that West County had that the bidders could never possibly had the opportunity to include in their RFP. And secondly, once a door is open on pilot projects, the tendency is to try and keep it open, which I think would really undermine you guys long term. So I really just want to hear your board's comments, what you guys are thinking, and maybe how we could address this jointly coming up in the next 15 months.
Okay, well, thank you. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to speak on this?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, with that, I'll close the public comment period on this. And then I put it back to the board of directors to
So question for
opine.
Mr. Tree, question for Mr. Tree, what is the process? Do we have guardrails around the timing of a pilot project?
We do, and Michael Conner can certainly address it, but 12 months, 12 to 15 months seems to be like the sweet spot for pilot projects, certainly not years.
We have metrics in place for success or how to measure go forward, go, no go, or not?
Yeah, I mean, we'll develop those. As you probably saw in the staff report, we're proposing a joint committee that would have a couple of LAFTA board members and a couple of County Connection board members on it, where should you choose to approve the staff recommendation, we would bring that committee together and take a look at what we want to accomplish during the pilot period in regard to policies and so on, and then establish the metrics, you know, how you would basically work through and see if they were a success or not.
Would those policies come back before us for approval?
Yes, they would. All the policies for the Wills service area would remain under the governance of the LAFTA board. So anything that we're proposing would come back to the LAFTA board, as well as the results and how you would like to move forward from there. So the end result of the pilot period is actually the issuance of another RFP, and whether it's a joint RFP with County Connection or an RFP just for the LAFTA agency would depend on the outcomes of the pilot.
Okay. Thank you. Move the item.
I have a couple of comments really quick.
Do we have other, well, I guess we've had a motion, so we need a second. We can continue conversation after that.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
I'll second.
Okay, any other comments on this before we vote?
I would just like to add some comments. I know that Rich was asking and kind of wanting to get our opinion. From the way I see it is that I'm interested to see how the partnership would actually end up working out, to see if it's even worth it at the end of the day. You know, do we collaborate and have a positive outcome and see how that works? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to do and provide the best transportation for our paratransit riders. And also, you know, obviously, yes, the cost savings of $300,000 is always a positive thing. But if it's going to take away from having high quality results for our ridership, then that's something that we need to, you know, go back and look at and address at those times. And it is, you know, a 15-month pilot program. So definitely just wanted to see how the partnership would work, honestly, at the end of the day, Rich.
Any other comments on this? So Director Brown.
Thank you. I second what Melissa was saying. I think it's a very, very good point that we're going to be carefully looking at the process, but the goal is to save money. Transit dollars are hard to find these days, and we're working hard to keep LAFTA running at the status that it is, as well as providing additional service into Contra Costa County, which will be a big step for the LAFTA organization. We've always stayed primarily in Alameda County. So going into Contra Costa in order to provide service, things like medical support into Contra Costa County will be important for our riders. So we'll absolutely take under consideration, I will take under consideration that we will be affecting the Teamsters, and we need to carefully review if this is a successful pilot program in 12 to 15 months.
Okay, any other comments? I'll just add that with respect to the question of how I view pilots, I view them as an experiment, a test, and that as long as we're clear on the criteria for what success means, that we'll evaluate it dispassionately at the end and make a decision, and that I would hope that just we don't let momentum carry us in one direction, but it's a clear decision at that point. Any other, if seeing no other.
I'll just add that I'm looking forward to seeing the report back to us before the pilot really gets going into implementation, the policies and procedures that we're going to put in place that'll be another chance for us all to talk about this again. I look forward to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we'll be clear on what we're doing before we do it. So with that, I would call for a motion.
It's been moved and seconded.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. A roll call, please.
Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Halbert,
Yes,
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Josie,
Yes.
Director Kick,
Yes.
Director Narum,
Yes.
Chair Warner.
Yes.
Passes
Okay, with
unanimously.
that, the item passes unanimously. Item D, the evaluation of the paratransit services. So with that, we'll go on to item 6, which is electing a new chair. Is there, I
Vice
would,
Chair.
Vice Chair, right. Boy, you're so precise, David. Very good. So anyway,
That was me.
oh,
I'm
that was you?
supposed to be.
Oh, okay,
My
good.
job.
Vice Chair. So, all right. So any nominations or motions here? If not, I'll nominate Carla Brown to be Vice Chair.
I'm happy to second that.
Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I'd be proud to fill in his position for Jerry Penton, who, as you know, is no longer on the board. And it is a Pleasanton position, so I'd be proud to do it.
Okay, good. And you've been around a while, so you know what you're doing.
I've been around the corner a few times, yeah.
Okay, with that, could we have a roll call, please?
Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Halbert,
yes,
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Josie,
Yes.
Director Kick,
Yes.
Director Narum,
Yes.
Chair Warner.
Yes.
Passes
With
unanimously.
that, okay, passes unanimously.
congratulations.
Yes. Okay. Now we're on to item 7, welcoming new board members and adoption of the revised resolution with committee assignments. So how do we want to do the welcoming?
Welcome,
Yes.
everybody.
So I would like to suggest that the new members just give us a little introduction of themselves, take an opportunity. So could we, we can start with Director Kick.
Everybody, I guess I'm Director Kick here. I am a new council member in Livermore. Bob and I were just on a 5-hour call, so we're doing lots of work in Livermore, and I'm excited to learn about all things transit. I'm on a lot of transit boards, so I'm learning a lot about trains and vehicles. Not too many planes yet, but who knows? Maybe that'll be another board for me another day.
It's coming. You have an airport.
Well, we'll have the flying autonomous vehicles. How's that for the next one?
Brittany, what district number do you represent, and roughly what are the geographic boundaries of that? Just out of curiosity.
I'm District 3, so I live close to the lab, and then anything that is in part of our I don't actually remember, Bob, what is the name of that specific plan? The South something specific plan. So near the lab, it runs along First Street. There's a tiny little corner of downtown, and then the dividing line is South Livermore, which patches right past City Hall. So if I'm at City Hall, I'm in my district, and if I'm across the street, I am not.
Got it. Very good. I know roughly where that is. Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, it's the big deal is East Avenue right now, and how we're going to manage that. Okay, and so who's next? Is that Director Josie then?
Sure. Director Josie from Dublin. I've been an alternate on LAFTA for 2 years, so I'm somewhat familiar, if not, certainly not completely familiar with everything that happens here, but fairly familiar. So I'm excited to be a member of the board now and not an alternate. Been on council for a couple of years now, so I know most of you. Brittany, I think this is the first time we've actually met in person. So anyway, glad to be part of the group. Thank you.
Excellent. We have Director Narum.
Thank you. So I've been actually an alternate to LAFTA for, I think, about 7 years, on the council for 7.5. I too seem to be doing a lot of serving on a variety of transit boards, and I'm thrilled to actually be a full member of this board. And hopefully I look forward to serving on the Finance Committee as a full member.
Well, great. And we have a Director Halbert who's reincarnated.
Yes.
So I don't know if you need to
Reincarnated. I just want to say that I might have a slightly different lens now as supervisor, but one other thing I really wanted to say more than that is this really is, of all the commissions, a great commission to be on, a great agency to be on. Well-run, wonderful executive director, doing good work, and with great people on it. All of the people on this committee have just been top-notch, and I want to say especially Chair Warner, Carla, Melissa. I mean, this is just a really good committee. So we got great things that we can go do. Welcome, Jean. I know for a couple of years as alternate, you've been chomping at the bit and always calling to make sure we're able to be at a meeting. If not, you could attend. And Kathy, of course, with your vast experience, it's great having you on board. And I can't think of a better person for the Finance Committee. So I hope that's the way it shakes out. But happy to be here in a different role, but still on the same committee.
Okay, wonderful. Oh,
Could I make a motion? It looks like before you, I would like to adopt a revised resolution with the committee assignments. I'd like to make the motion.
okay, do you want to spell them out? Or I was just about to do
Sure,
that. Or
I'm
do
happy to, but it said welcome. I didn't want you to move forward. Sorry, I'm micromanaging. I would like to recommend that the board adopt resolution 05-2021, appointing Brittany Kick, Livermore City Council member, and Kathy Narum, Pleasanton City Council member, to the Finance and Administration Committee, with David Halbert, Alameda County Supervisor, and Jean Josie, Dublin City Council member, to the Projects and Services Committee.
Okay.
I'm happy to second that.
Excellent. Any discussion, or let's go to a roll call?
Vice Chair Brown,
Yes.
Director Halbert,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Josie,
Yes.
Director Kick,
Yes.
Director Narum,
Yes.
Chair Warner.
Yes.
Passes
So that
unanimously.
motion. Okay, thank you. So that will move on to item 8, appointment of a LAFTA representative to the Tri-Valley San Joaquin Valley Regional Rail Authority. And I'll just speak at the prior to, a couple of months ago, I was the representative from Livermore. We've done it in the past because we had a lot of the action going through Livermore, where the station goes, et cetera. And we've used the Livermore representative as a delegate to Valley Link. And so as I'm now the mayor, I would like to move that we appoint Director Kick as the representative to the Tri-Valley San Joaquin Valley Regional Rail Authority.
I'd like to second that. And actually, there's so many of you that are already on there. I'm not, but I think Brittany would make a great choice.
I also agree with Vice Chair Brown, and I would like to add that as a member of Valley Link already, I do think that it's very important Livermore is adequately represented to make sure things are designed appropriately. And as they've said, that there's places for the Livermore residents to sit on the train when it pulls into their station. And so I think that's very appropriate from this body to have another Livermore representative, or to select a Livermore representative.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other comments? If not, we can have a roll call, please.
Vice Chair Brown,
Yes, and I wonder if the train's going to go through her district. Huh?
Director Halbert,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Josie,
Yes.
Director Kick,
Do I vote on my own appointment?
You can.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes.
Director Naren,
Yes.
Chair Warner,
Yes.
passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So we're
That's
now
a
on
big
to,
no. We'd have to re-talk about it if you said no, you didn't want to vote. Sorry. Chair.
okay. Now we're on to item 9, state of the system.
Nice. I think I'll start it off, but I think each of my directors will have a part in this presentation. I think we have a slide deck. I'll kind of pause while the slide deck gets up and going. You know, today we wanted to talk about really operations, take a look at things from a pre-COVID level, the services we provide and how the performance of the system was doing, talk about what's happened during the COVID pandemic, and then also talk about the recovery of how we kind of view things moving forward with the vaccinations and the recovery and your finances at the agency. But you know, the first slide's my favorite slide right after this title slide. It's actually a slide of all of the employees save Cyrus Sheik, our senior transportation planner. It's a picture of really who is behind LAFTA. And of course, before I talk about our team, certainly an acknowledgement that we're mostly a contract agency. So all of the fixed route operations is contracted to MV, for example, and our door-to-door service for senior and disabled who can't access that fixed route system is provided by a contractor, MTM. And will soon be, as you've approved today, a pilot project with County Connection, our neighboring transit agency just north of us. But, you know, as I think about this group, they're really flexible, really knowledgeable. I think if I brought anything to LAFTA over the last 5 or 6 years that I've been here, it's been just the quality of your staff working on everything that we're doing. I mean, they've been hand selected and hand picked. They're capable, they're flexible, they pivot quickly. So it's a tremendous staff that you have, and it's your biggest asset at the agency, without a doubt. You know, as I turn the next couple of slides over to your Director of Planning, Tony McCauley, I did want to, again, just make mention that we're talking about operations today. Our intent was to not have a really long board meeting. So we plan at the next board meeting in March to bring to you your capital projects. And of course, those have a lot of interest to you. This small team not only takes care of the fixed route and the door-to-door service, but it also has multiple bus stop projects. It has a zero emission study that we're doing to transition our fleet into a zero emissions fleet. It has a future operations and maintenance facility that's on the books that we'll talk about. You're out of space here at Rutan, and so the board has purchased prior, a couple of years ago, property over in the Oaks Business Park here in Livermore for an operations and a maintenance facility that'll take you well into the future. And then 3 really high profile projects. I'm just amazed at what everybody can pull off here, but you have a shared autonomous vehicle project. It will, you know, it's probably one of only a small handful of autonomous vehicle projects that public transit agencies are managing and getting up and going. Ours is doing very well. So you'll learn about that next meeting. We have the Dublin parking garage, which is of high interest to the board. We are the sponsoring agency for that, and the money flows through the state, through LAFTA. And so we, by default, oversee that project to make sure it's done well. But the County of Alameda certainly is a lead agency in the design and the build of that. And then finally, the Valley Link project that everyone's well aware of, that, it's a $2 billion project, and you currently have probably 100 different folks working on that project, from engineering to architect to planning. I mean, it's a mega project. And so our staff plays a big role in that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tony. I think he was just going to take you through the fixed route system, and then our Director of Operations and Innovation, Tone Tron, will take you through the paratransit, what we do with paratransit and door-to-door service. And then our Director of Finance, Tamara Edwards, will walk you through kind of the impact of COVID and how we see things flowing towards the end of this fiscal year and into next. And then I'll wrap it up with a couple of governance slides to talk about some things that Chair Warner and I have been working on with the Blue Ribbon Task Force that could affect the governance of LAFTA and the other 27 transit agencies in the Bay Area. So with that, Tony, all yours.
All right. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So I'm going to walk you through some of the biggest things that have happened here at LAFTA in the last 5 years. These are kind of the big highlights. Back in 2016, consulting firm Nelson Nygaard was hired to do a comprehensive operational analysis where they look at your existing services and interview board members, hold public hearings, get public input, and then make some recommendations for improvements to your service. And the outcome of that study was that a much greater focus of our services on connections with BART, especially at the East Pleasanton, Dublin Pleasanton BART station, greatly improved service to Las Positas College, and the introduction of a second rapid route. The next big bullet point there is the Go Dublin partnership with Uber and Lyft. LAFTA was the first agency in the United States to do a contract with both of those rideshare providers to offer subsidized shared rides. The way the program works is LAFTA pays 50% of the cost of a shared ride trip on Uber and Lyft. It has to be 2 or more people. And we pay 50% of the cost up to $5, which turned out to be much less expensive than our typical subsidy per ride on the fixed route system. That program has since been expanded district-wide. The next bullet point, in 1997, the Las Positas students voted 90% in favor, 10% opposed, to implement a new student fee for an unlimited access bus pass. So that was a huge win for us. The 15-minute bus service, I think, really helped seal that deal. And the student ridership just has grown and grown over the years. In 1998, we launched the shared autonomous vehicle testing near the Dublin Pleasanton BART station. That project's moved along to the point where late last year, we got authorization from both the federal and state agencies in charge of that autonomous vehicle approvals to actually carry passengers on our vehicle. And we believe we're the first transit agency on the West Coast to be authorized to carry passengers. The next bullet point, a big program for us, Alameda County Transportation Commission funds a student transit pass program. Started off as a pilot program in the Livermore Valley Joint Unified School District with 4 schools. And the program was so successful, not only here, but throughout Alameda County, that they expanded the program. It's now available to all middle and high school students in the Livermore School District. And that was as of 2018. And then last year, the program was expanded to also include low-income students in the Pleasanton School District. And during the current year, the plan was for the program to be expanded to low-income students in the Dublin School District. but as of yet, there hasn't been any in classroom education happening. The last bullet point there is about our ridership. Our ridership's increased by 12% from 2017 to 2019. Why that is significant is most of the other Bay Area transit agencies during that period of time were actually seeing reduced ridership, and ours was going up because of a lot of emphasis on student transportation and some of these programs that you're seeing there. So Jennifer, I could have the next slide. When you do things with an organization the size that we are, and you do the kind of things that were shown on the previous slide, people do take notice. And we've been fortunate that in 2018, the California Transit Association named us the Agency of the Year for California. In 2019, the California Association for Commuter Transportation named us the Transit Agency of the Year for California. In the 19 and 20 school year, mostly because of the Student Pass program and the work we did with the school district in Livermore, they gave us one of their Partner in Education Awards, which we were really proud of. And probably the biggest one on here is in 2020, the American Public Transit Association named us the top transit agency in North America. So that's a pretty big honor, and one that most any agency would be very proud to win. So we can go to the next slide. This was a map of our pre-COVID fixed route services. You can kind of see the coverage area that we had throughout Dublin and Pleasanton and Livermore here. 9 local routes. We're down to 7 now because we have suspended service on 2 of those for low ridership during COVID. We had 3 express routes prior to COVID. We have 0 now because there wasn't any ridership. We had 15 school routes. Those aren't running. They quit running effective March 13th when all the schools closed down. And then we have the 2 rapid routes, the 10R and the 30R. And those are really the backbone of the system. They serve all 3 cities. The 10R starts at the BART station, goes through Pleasanton, ends up at the Transit Center in Livermore. The 30 starts at the West BART station, goes to the East BART station, goes past Las Positas College, ends up all the way out at Livermore Lab, through downtown Livermore, and then out to the lab. Those 2 routes, I say they're the backbone of the system. They run on a 15-minute frequency. You don't even need a schedule really to catch those buses. That's the beauty of them. And they account for about 55% of our total daily ridership, and also 55% of the hours we have on the street. So they're very popular routes. They serve a lot of the biggest destinations in our entire service area. So I think that's a summary of the service. And if the next slide comes up and it looks like tones, yes, it is.
Can you hit next, please? So good afternoon, everyone. As Michael mentioned earlier, our 8A Paracenter service is a door-to-door service that's available to people with disability. And we serve all 3 cities in the Tri-Valley. Can you hit next, Jennifer? So it is a complimentary service to fixed route. So 88 Dial-Rite is available whenever and wherever fixed route is operating. So in terms of volume, pre-COVID, we provided approximately 150 trips per weekday. Similar to fixed route, we have seen a sharp decline in ridership. So it has gone from 150 to currently approximately 40 to 50 trips per day. And then, all right, this is Parataxi. Although we do have a very robust Dial-Rite program, we did want to look at other mobility options that we can offer to our 8A clients. And that's how Parataxi came about. So this service is a subsidy program that's available to people with disability. And unlike dial-ride service where customer have to schedule a day in advance for the trip, they can use Parataxi for same-day service. So in terms of the subsidy, the customer only have to pay 15% of the trip cost, and LAFTA reimburses 85%, up to $20 per ride. So similar to other services, we also have seen a drop in usage for Parataxi. Pre-COVID, we subsidized about 200 trips per month. Currently, we're subsidizing about 60 trips per month. So customer can use either Uber, Lyft, or taxi as long as they provide a receipt. We would reimburse them for those trips. Next, please. So Tony touched on the Go Dublin program earlier. Go Tri-Valley is an expansion of Go Dublin. This program was launched back in May of 2020. So now everyone in Tri-Valley can receive the 50% subsidy up to $5 for all trips within the 3 cities. So we have seen a sharp increase in usage on Go Tri-Valley. Back in May, we were subsidizing about 8 trips on both of those providers, both Uber and Lyft, and currently we're providing about 28 subsidies per day on those providers. So for, this is rare, but for individuals who don't have a smartphone, we did partner with GoGo Grandparents. So they can call GoGo Grandparents and they'll help them facilitate the trip booking needs. I'll pass it back to Tony to talk about our COVID response plan.
Hey, before Tony jumps in, are there any questions about the fixed route services that we provide or the door-to-door paratransit services? I think of note, today is an important day in Pleasanton. Pleasanton has contracted with Black Tie for their door-to-door services with seniors and has transferred the ADA paratransit door-to-door service to LAFTA. So today is the first day that we're assuming those rides in Pleasanton from a disability perspective of door-to-door service. So, but I just wanted to pause before we kind of look at what COVID did to the system and the ridership, just to see if by chance, Chair Warner, there's a board member that might have a question just about the services themselves.
Okay, any questions?
Could I ask one, please? The GoGo Tri-Valley, is that open to anybody, or are there parameters or certain criteria that a person has to meet to be able to use that?
So unlike our dial-ride service or our Parataxi program, Go Tri-Valley is available to the general public. The only parameter is that the trip has to start and end within the Tri-Valley area.
Okay. So in other words, I could, if I wanted, get on my phone and get a ride to the board meeting?
Yes, it's just that you have to put it for Uber, you have to put in a promo code. Or for both Uber and Lyft, you have to put in a promo code for the subsidy to apply.
And you'd get that off of the website on the web page for Go Tri-Valley.
I can let you in on a secret. The promo code is Go Tri-Valley.
Cool.
So just to add, there's a few things. You have to ride with others and you have to use one of the contracted firms. So you're not a solo rider.
That is correct, except that shared ride service on Uber and Lyft was suspended as part of their COVID protocol. And so at the present time, you can ride as an individual or you can ride with another member of a household, and still get the cheaper rate. But the rate you pay for that type of service is a little higher than the typical shared ride rate, which is usually lower. So once people are able to ride together in a shared ride mode on Uber and Lyft again, the rates will go down.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay, so let's look at the good news and the bad news. The good news was from September of 2019 through February of 2020, we had experienced 6 consecutive months of double-digit ridership increases, which was unheard of for us. If you look at October of 2019, the bar is actually above 200,000 for the month. That's the first time that happened since 2008. So to say we were on a roll is putting it mildly. And one thing this graph also shows, I'll say, is the impact of student ridership. You know, we carry about 2,500 passengers a day to middle and high schools in Livermore, Pleasanton, and Dublin. And if you look at November and December, you can really see the impact of when schools go on Thanksgiving break or holiday break or something like that. It really makes our ridership dip for the monthly totals. So that said, we were cruising right along at double-digit ridership growth, and then March 13th and March 17th happened, and everything kind of fell off the table. And where we were averaging 7,000 passengers a month, we all of a sudden, a week into shelter in place, were in the 800s. We lost like 85% of our ridership. And so that's kind of held steady. It did increase briefly for a period of time. We were up around 1,200 or 1,300, and then the December the 7th shelter in place happened, and we dropped back down to our current level where we're carrying about 1,100 people a day. I think that's about all I had on this slide. You can just click all those open and I'll, so early on in like the second week of March 17th was like the day that everybody remembers. That was the Monday when everything started shutting down. So we started disinfecting our buses daily. It had been done weekly prior to that. We started providing protective equipment to our employees, hand sanitizer dispensers and gloves. Remembering this was actually back in the good old days, pre-mask. Masks were actually discouraged back then. We went to a fare-free operation. We were one of the first agencies in the Bay Area to do this. This was to provide separation between our bus drivers and passengers, which happens a lot in the fare payment process. So 1 week after the school shut down, we were blocking off the front half of the bus and having everybody, unless you were in a mobility device, you were getting on and off the back door and not having to pay. We also implemented a number of service reductions. The March 16th service reductions, that's the elimination of all the school trips since there was no school. March 26th, we reduced some services that were either duplicated by other routes or where you could get, you still didn't really lose service. You could still get from point A to point B. It might just take you a little longer. And then April 6th, we took things down another notch based on the 85% drop in ridership. So we're currently running basically a weekend service level. And so that's about 50% of pre-COVID. So, this combined with the previous slide where we saw the ridership drop off, one of the questions everybody asks is, well, when do you think it's going to turn around? What's it going to take for things to turn around? So we did a survey of riders, and we asked not just people who were still riding, but people who had stopped riding as a result of stay at home or COVID or no school. We asked them what were the most important things that would get you back on a Wheels bus. And the top three answers were: number one, my employer or my school tells me I get to come back. Number two was a vaccine is developed and deployed. And number three is that they felt comfortable that the buses were safe. And so we couldn't really do a whole lot about number one or number two, but number three, we could start an education program to let people know that we're doing everything we can to keep our vehicles clean. And so there's actually a page on our website. If you click on the little red bar at the top, you can go and find videos that have been done, and some brochures and an update on that we update daily about what service we're running. And so I think when Jennifer clicks the next slide, you're going to see one of them. Oh, we need some sound.
For 4 continuous hours with hospital-grade disinfectant. This ensures a regular deep clean on every bus. It's just one of the ways we're keeping our riders safe and healthy.
Let's try that one more time.
Hi everyone, I'm Michael, Executive Director of the Wheels. Here today to talk to you about how we're keeping our riders safe. Each day before Wheels or Rapid Bus leaves the yard, we fog it for 4 continuous hours with hospital-grade disinfectant. This ensures a regular deep clean on every bus. It's just one of the ways we're keeping our riders safe and healthy.
So those have actually been put out as Facebook posts over the last month or so. We've done some radio ads, PSAs on KKIQ, kind of call it the Hi, I'm Michael Tree series. And so he's the featured speaker on those. Jennifer, if you just want to click up all these, I'll just kind of touch on them. So what else have we been doing recently? We limit on-bus capacity for social distancing. When you implement a 6-foot social distancing guideline, the maximum number of people you can get on our biggest buses is 10. Our largest buses are 40 feet long, and you can get 10 passengers on there as long as they're not related. If they're related, you can fit a few more because they can sit in seats next to one another, etc. But we actually monitor this on a daily basis, get a daily report. Anytime a bus driver has more than 7 people on their bus at one time, they call that in to dispatch, and then dispatch keeps a report, hour by hour report, route by route. We get a report in the first thing in the morning that tells us how many times during the day there were 7 or more people on a bus, and it's not happening very often. When our ridership did bump up briefly to the 1,400 range, maybe in October, November of last year, we decided to put 2 overload buses out, one at the Livermore Transit Center and one at the East Dublin BART station. The purpose for those was if a driver is going along a route and gets up to around 9 people on the bus, we send out the overload bus to pick up the remaining passengers on the route, so he doesn't get more than 10 people on his bus at a time. Those have been used frequently for a number of operational reasons. Occasionally for overloads, we have almost a daily overload on the Route 10 coming out of the Livermore Transit Center when an ACE train shows up and connects with the Route 10. And we're using the overload bus for that almost every single day. We've installed plexiglass barriers up by the driver compartment to separate the driver from passengers who are boarding the bus and paying fares. It's kind of a germ barrier like you see, everywhere now. They're installed on all the buses that are currently in service. We've upgraded the filters, air filters on the buses to the highest rating that's allowed, and also implemented a real-time bus passenger load app on the transit app. The transit app is a mobile app that tells you not. Previously, it was important because people would download it to find out where their bus was along the route. But they have since also tied into our automated passenger counting data feed that comes off of our buses. And so they know and can tell you in real time how many people are on board that bus. So you can make your decision on whether or not you want to maybe wait for the next bus to see how crowded that bus is. Finally, we track some health and safety stats for the Blue Ribbon dashboard. These are things like we monitor our drivers complying with the face covering regulations. Are our passengers complying with the face covering regulations? Are our passenger loads adhering to the social distancing guidelines? So we track those and we report those to the Blue Ribbon Task Force. And I believe that's all I had on that. If you have any questions on our COVID responses, I can answer those before we move to finance.
Any questions? Director Hernandez?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make some comments because I feel that our staff from day one did an amazing job. When they came forward to the directors and said, we have these protocols and guidelines that we want to put forward during COVID. And they honestly just stepped up to the plate and did what they needed to do. And I'm talking about every single person played a role. So even to the bus drivers, one of our priorities, we wanted to make sure the bus drivers were safe. And Michael Tree and the rest of the gang literally just started, putting everything in place. So I just want to give you guys a big applaud and say thank you so much. And I know that it's been a difficult almost year, but you guys have made this last year, I think, for our riders and also, by giving the free fare on the bus and just for the staff and being accommodating. So I just want to say thank you to all of the staff members.
Thank you. If I could add one more thing that came to mind as you were talking. One of the mandates that kind of caught us off guard was the requirement for everyone to wear a mask and or a face covering of some sort. And that was something that we had not purchased because it had actually been discouraged early on. And so we placed an order for 5,000 of the 3-ply masks, but it was going to take a month to a month and a half for them to be delivered because, believe it or not, everyone else in the world was trying to get them at the same time. So I put a post on Nextdoor and explained what our situation was. And lo and behold, we had people donating masks to the point where we had, I believe, 3,500 masks were donated to us in 2 weeks, which was just unbelievable outpouring from the community.
Great. I see Director Kick.
On the subject of masking, now that the CDC is recommending double masking, are we able to provide that to drivers? Are we recommending that to drivers? What's that looking like?
We're not requiring it. We have a supply of masks. In fact, I have 5,000 here in my office right now in boxes, and we have thousands more. And the drivers can take as many masks as they want. They also carry a supply with them so that if a passenger tries, and these are individually packaged masks, so if a passenger tries to get on the bus or is at the bus stop and does not have a mask on, the driver is instructed to give the passenger a mask and wait for them to put it on to come onto the bus.
Okay, I don't see any other questions or comments at this point. Go to the next section.
Thank you. So I'll just give a quick overview here. Our the graph I use, or the chart I use, is from 2020 because those percentages were more normalized. This year is a little wonky because we got the CARES Act funding. So I brought up the 2020, and just to kind of tell you where these funds come from. So TDA, Transit Development Act, and Measures B and BB are both sales tax based. The STA, State Transit Assistance, which is the majority of that state money, is sales tax, but only on diesel fuel. RM2 is bridge toll funds, and we receive those for our Route 30. Other locally generated, the majority of that is transit funds for clean air, both through the Bay Area Air Quality Management District and ACTC. And those come from vehicle registration. Miscellaneous is just that, miscellaneous. It's advertising, interest, Google parking fees, the money we get for our cell phone towers, the amount ACE pays us to sell tickets. And then special contract fares and passenger fares. Passenger fares are what people put in the fare box or what they buy tickets. Special contract fares come from ACE. We have an agreement with them to let their passengers ride our bus for free, and they reimburse us 60% of the cost for the routes 53 and 54. And then we have Hacienda Business Park, pays us for their Hacienda Business Parks. And then federal funds, and most years that's about $400,000 for paratransit. But again, in 2021, we got a bunch of additional FTA funds. Next slide, please. Okay, so our tax-based revenues, at the time of the budgeting last year, I should back up, we received the majority of our funding. We are told how much to expect. We don't actually estimate it ourselves. So we have to wait for it. And last year we got the estimates in February and everything was a little up from the year before, all was good. And then in March they said, hey, that's not happening because we just got into the SIP. And then by May, they finally got us updated estimates. And they estimated our tax-based revenues to be down by 40%. As the actuals have come in for this year, they're actually only down by 4.5%. Most counties in the Bay Area actually went up. Alameda was not one of them. Alameda, Marin, and San Francisco are still down, but 4.5% versus 40. I'm more than happy personally. Bridge tolls, because everyone was told to work from home, were expected to decrease by 40%. They're now estimated to be down by 25%. So still a decrease from where we were. At the time of our budget, we didn't know how much we were getting in CARES Act funding, but they were telling us it's going to be at least $5 million. So we budgeted $5 million. At LAFTA, we do not budget really anything we don't know we're getting. We don't apply for a grant and then budget it in the hopes we get it. If we know we're getting it, we budget it. Otherwise, we don't. We're very conservative that way. But we received $6.8 million. So that was great. That's helping us. With these revenue changes, we do expect that revenues are going to cover all the expenses for fiscal year 21. Our fare box, which already is not a very big part of our budget, but it of course decreased both to the fare free period from March to September, and just because ridership decreased. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. Next slide, please. So we're looking good for 2021. We are beginning the budgeting process for fiscal year 22. On the revenue side, we're waiting on the forecast. They should be coming in the next 6 weeks, depending on the funding agency, and we'll be finding out some of the grants we've applied for if we're receiving them. There was the second COVID relief package, but LAFTA was not included in that. Only 5 transit agencies in the entire Bay Area are getting money from that, so we weren't included. However, MTC staff, at the direction of Chair Haggerty, they're working to find other funds to help kind of make us whole. So not just for us, but for the other agencies that were not included in that second round of funding. So fingers crossed for 2022. I believe that's it. Jennifer, next slide. Okay.
All right. So I've got the last just couple of slides here, and I can move through them pretty quickly. But Chair Warner, did you sense anyone had any questions in regard to the finance piece of the presentation?
I didn't see any hands raised, but here's your opportunity. I don't see any.
Gotcha. I mean, the good news is the revenues are sufficient for the expenses in this fiscal year, as Tamara mentioned, and then we're anxiously looking for projections for the next fiscal year and hoping to work with MTC to backfill funding that we didn't receive through that latest COVID relief bill. And Chair Haggerty's playing a really important role with that at MTC. So these last couple of slides really are kind of a governance issue. When COVID, when the pandemic hit, Chair Haggerty at MTC established a Blue Ribbon Task Force, and it's composed of a handful of transit operators, the GMs or the CEOs. I think 9 of the 27 agencies were asked to be on the task force. It's also composed of business leaders and key policymakers in the Bay Area. And really, as they met, they talked about wanting to, first and foremost, take care of the transit agencies during COVID, make sure that important policy level decisions were being made in regard to funding to keep everyone on the street. And then they also had real strong desires to restore transit ridership as we get into the recovery phase, and at the same time improve regional connections and look for new revenues to make important improvements. The next slide shows probably what will become their biggest impact as a task force, and that is they're looking at the potential for a network manager who would have the power to implement reform within the 27 transit agencies, power to implement, for example, fare policy changes, to have fare policies align themselves so that they were consistent among the agencies, powers to affect or make decisions on service and schedules, again, to make the system more seamless and easy to use. Branding and wayfinding, station design so that they were consistent, capital project prioritization and capital project delivery. And even there's some consideration, this is just a small list of what the network manager could have power to do in implementing reform. As the last bullet point shows, it could even move into advocacy, what's advocated and what the priority is with the advocacy. So, you know, there's a lot of positive things about what's on within those bullet points. And as you can imagine, you have maybe a continuum of decision making where on the one side of the continuum is a local agency that controls all of these things at a local level with their decision making. And on the far end of the other side of the spectrum, you could have consolidation where there's actually just one transit agency in the entire Bay Area making all those decisions. And so what's happening is the Blue Ribbon Task Force is finding somewhere in the middle to have a network manager who would be empowered. And what will come over the next few months with the Blue Ribbon Task Force is decision-making in regard to the network manager. And that likely will flow into legislation by Assemblymember Chu, who will give powers and authority to the network manager to do his or her job. And this network manager could be one person, or it could be a body, like an executive committee that is selected. But I think there's some things you're probably thinking of that Chair Warner and I have certainly been talking about, and that is that a network manager would in fact, to some degree, obviously make decisions that are currently made at the local level. So the last slide here in this whole deck is really just some questions to ponder. I'll make sure that we email out this slide deck for you. And then that way, if you want to continue to think about some things on the slide deck, and in particular these questions, this will be the biggest impact for sure of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. They plan to meet through June and wrap up their work in June. And they have begun to have meetings with the chairs of the local transit agencies to talk about what they're envisioning and how they're going about their decision making. So with that said, that's the slide deck, and that's kind of from an operational perspective where we've been pre-COVID and where we're at during COVID, and kind of how we view the recovery. I think Tony just alluded to the fact that we're watching really closely how things evolve with the different tiers and the vaccination schedules. We're working really closely with the school districts, knowing that as they bring students back, that could have a big impact if physical distancing of 6 feet is still in place, or even if it is narrowed down to 3 feet. That could have substantial impact on your budget and our ability to provide the service levels that are needed. So with that, Chair, I'll wrap things up, and we're certainly here for any questions.
If I could, on your last point there on the Blue Ribbon Task Force, just add a couple of things. Yep. That I did participate in one of the meetings where they wanted to hear from the local operators, and they made it clear that their intent was not to eliminate the local operators, but was to improve coordination, ridership. The other thing that we pointed out is not necessarily a zero-sum game here where some win and lose, but that there'll be an effort to get additional funding. So along with that enabling of the operator, maybe we can get some more funding. And that there's really, it was also pointed out that front and center is the less advantaged rider is the key, because other people have options and those don't. So I think there's a sense of there's a need for the better connectivity, but it was heard loud and clear that the different ways that service is provided locally still has to be acknowledged and allowed to exist, rather than one size fits all where some people really end up losing and as a result of all this. So there's an attempt to make it a good thing. Whether that comes to pass or not is going to depend on what actually happens. But we did express an idea of what are the metrics by which we want to see if this is working? And it goes along with what Director Halbert was saying about that paratransit thing as well. We really need to know, eyes wide open, what are we attempting to do and did we do it? And of course, in this case, it's not necessarily a we, because it might be a they making decisions, but they're giving us the opportunity to be heard. And I would suggest that this is something that this board has to pay very close attention to, and through the various channels that we've got, to make sure that we're advocating for what we think is in everyone's best interest. So with that, any other, I'll open up to generally the questions as Michael asked. Director Brown.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the question regarding we're being in a suburban area, and it's very different than maybe a more urban area where San Francisco buses, Oakland buses are going down the street continually. And our ridership, as you've seen by the charts from Tony, is heavily dependent on student ridership. I just want to make sure if you, Michael and Bob, if you're sitting on these, how that will play in these recommendations, which are so different from high density areas that are served differently and even have different ridership.
Right. Well, that was part of the conversation, and what, you know, there were representatives from all of the different transit agencies, and it's urban, suburban, and it's fairly rural too. There's the county connection kind of things. So there was an acknowledgement that those differences exist and they need to be accommodated. Exactly how, not clear, and that's why we got to pay very close attention. Michael, would you want to add to what I said?
No, I think you articulated it well.
Great, thanks.
And I also wanted to thank Michael very much for preparing me to participate in the meeting. And so I was able to, you know, make it clear that we were paying attention. Was that, wouldn't you say that, Michael?
Yes, it was good. There was good, healthy discussion at that meeting, Director Brown. I mean, it was obvious that we were supportive of making a more seamless system throughout the Bay Area, but wanting to be very careful about how we did that and to leave local decision making on routes and those type of things at the local level to the extent possible.
I think that's a very good point. We're making it clear we are supportive, because if you go into one of these things and say, you know, no way do we want anything to happen, we're not listened to. But I think we affirmed that the goals were what we supported. The question is just to make sure that the local excellent service that we have is preserved. Any other questions, comments on this item? Otherwise, we'll move to item 10. Oh, sorry, Director Narum.
Thank you. Michael, I'm just curious if you could comment on this network manager concept and whether or not you see any benefit to an agency such as LAVTA. Because I do agree with Vice Chair Brown, you know, we are definitely different from AC Transit and probably different from County Connection. And I'm just wondering what, if any, benefits we might see from that concept, or if you see any as, you know, as our leader, expert, one with the expertise.
You know, I do think there's benefits to the network management. It's actually a concept that the transit operators themselves worked on and proposed to some extent. You know, it's tough for 27 agencies to get on the same page and to create a real seamless border between the 27 agencies, so that someone who's using multiple systems, transit systems, to get to work and back can have an easy and convenient experience. So I think that's where the network manager would benefit, is the way it's teeing up. The state would likely, through legislative authority, give the person some ability to work with the transit agencies and ensure that change happens. It's just that balancing act, right? Not digging in too far with the authority to where the local agencies can't put the service where they want to put it, when they want to put it. So I see a balancing act there, and I do see the good and the potential issues.
Okay, so in other words, we need to keep our eye on it.
I think you do, and this will be the lasting impact of that Transit Blue Ribbon Task Force. I mean, they've helped out with COVID and the distribution of federal funds, but this will be the impact that goes on for years to come.
Okay, thank you. And I think you said you would email us a copy of the slide deck.
Yep, I'll do that right after the
That'd be
meeting.
great. I'd really appreciate it.
You bet.
Director Josie.
Thank you. If I might really quickly, I wanted to weigh in that I see some real benefits to things like that for riders, given how many different transit agencies our riders interface with. If we were off sort of on our own as, being in the Bay Area and our riders stayed within our own network, that would be one thing. But given that, they interface with County Connector, they interface with BART, they interface with ACE, all of those different things. I mean, look how long it took just to get Clipper everywhere, right? And it's those kinds of things that would be great, but we don't want them dictating our routes, our student routes, all of those kinds of things. But if there was such a thing as a network manager, all of the things that we were doing around COVID safety, for example, if everybody was doing the same protocols the next time an event like this comes up, I can see some benefit to that. So just sort of want to echo what everybody's talking about keeping our eyes on it, but seeing some benefit.
Okay, any other comments on item 9, or we'll move to 10?
Chair Warner, you have 2 people in the public that would like to speak.
Oh, yes. Is anybody, I'm sorry, anybody in the public want to comment on item 9?
So the first person is Amy Malden, and then there's one other. I'm just gonna allow her to talk.
Okay.
Hi, this is Amy Malden, and I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of how this would really help the clients that rely on using the, connecting from one transit agency to another. Now, I'm the co-chair of the TAC committee right now, but I used to be a travel trainer. And I used to have a hard time, and I still do now as a case manager, when my clients live in the Tri-Valley and they want to attend like a day program in Hayward, because of the connectivity from the Tri-Valley over there, oftentimes they could not go to a day program because the transfer would just take too long for them to get over there. So many times they wouldn't be able to access the community-based programs that they wanted to go to, whether it be in Lafayette, if they lived in the Tri-Valley. And so this, when I heard about this, it sounded so great because they wouldn't have to do that transfer at the BART station, which it just wasn't reasonable to expect somebody to take that and get to a day program that's out of the Tri-Valley. They just wouldn't be able to make it on time. So that's really important for the disabled people to get to day programs. And then I had another situation when I was a travel trainer, and there was an elderly mom that wanted to visit her son that lived, over in San Leandro. And I went on that trip with her, and it was just almost a disaster trying to transfer at that BART station and get to the group home. So it was not a good situation, just trying to get to 2 agencies to work together. And she was left stranded there at one time and couldn't even get back home. And so this is how 2 instances that I personally saw, that really makes a difference to the customers that really rely on the paratransit. So that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next. Do we have another member of the public that wants to speak?
You do. He has his hand down now, so I don't know if he still wanted to speak. Oh, wait, hold on.
Hi there, this is Stephen Dunbar. Again, I did want to listen in very specifically for this point, so thanks for taking my comments again. I wanted to share some experience that I've had myself. I think you all are on the right page here, local control when it works, getting the help from the planner, from MTC, from this network manager when it helps. I've had difficulty transferring between Wheels and CCGTA before. The the route that goes up to San Ramon was at points where there were 25-minute, 30-minute transfers on weekends. I've had things happen when I'm getting off of BART and BART is running behind and isn't coordinated with Wheels. And I know your staff's already been working on that, and I know BART's also been working on that. So there's things that are happening in the background to make that more seamless. But I think the network manager can continue to help us with that in the future. So keep engaging. I wanted to offer one more thing also on the end of the slideshow that they could also help with. And it's not really that ours is bad, but for communications, all of the different agencies through the Bay communicate in different ways. ACE communicates on Facebook. Wheels communicates mostly on Facebook or sometimes on Twitter. BART communicates on Twitter. Some agencies use the transit app directly. So if you're stuck on an ACE train, then you have to log into Twitter to find out if your bus is going to be on time or something. And having a coordination for that so that everybody's getting information in a consistent way could be very helpful as well. So keep participating. It's great to hear all of your remarks on this. I think you guys are on the right track. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak?
I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll just comment from what I saw, and Michael, you can add, but there was some low-hanging fruit with respect to the network manager, and it was pointed out that communications is one of them, just so that people knew what was going on. And I can't remember the number. What % of the riders actually do transfers at the moment between systems?
So the number that they have is those using Clipper Card, and it's 8% of the ridership in the Bay Area actually uses multiple transit systems to get to work or to travel.
So I think what's pointed out is only 8% at the moment. And so that means there's a lot of opportunity if we get better coordination. On the other hand, people will say, well, it's only 8%, so let's not clobber ourselves locally. Or just keep it in perspective. I think I saw Director Hernandez, you had your hand up. Do you want to speak on this?
It should be down, but no, thank you. I have no comments at this time.
Okay, good. I think with that, then, are we allowed to move on to item 10? We are.
All right. So this is a information item only, no action required. It is the public input on COVID-19 emergency service changes. Every transit agency in the United States that accepts federal money must have a policy in place to accept public input anytime you change fares or anytime you have major service changes. LAFTA is no different. And so we have a policy that was adopted in 2008. And there is a provision in the policy that allows for emergency service changes to be made without a public comment period. However, if those changes go on for longer than 180 days, you are required to have a public input process. So we did have a public input process. The board authorized that back in December. We advertised it in both the Pleasanton Weekly and the Livermore Independent, put out a news release, put it on our website, Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, put notices up on our buses in 5 languages. And over the course of 7 weeks, received 1 comment, and that was from our Facebook friend, Robert Fleming, who said he has no issues personally with the changes because he believes we had to make the changes, and he's glad that we're still running. So that was the only official response that we got. I will say that occasionally we will get emails just in through the information line from people saying, when do you think you'll be coming back? When can we have more service on the Route 15? When can we have the express bus to Pleasant Hill again? And I think that's going to be part of a larger discussion of bringing service back. and prioritizing which services will come back. And at that point, we'll probably, not probably, we will have another public input process because we'll be making decisions on prioritizing certain services over other services. But for now, there's no action required.
Okay. Thank you. Director Kick.
I was just wondering if you happen to know, if not, if maybe you could get back to me at another time and we could talk about it later. Do you know what tier or when bus drivers will be considered for the vaccine?
Yes, but it depends on what day of the week it is. Because two weeks ago, we were in a different tier than we're in right now, allegedly. And Michael has my piece of paper that has the tiers on it, but public transit is in the group right below teachers and people over the age of 65. So transit employees fall in that second group in tier 2 or whatever it's called. But last week or the week before, an announcement was made that the state of California is going to be moving away from that process and going completely to an age-based prioritization based on the fact that seems to be a factor that impacts ICU admittance and death more so than occupation. So that's the latest that we've seen. But we were supposed to be in the next tier.
Do we know what the percentage of our drivers fall into that higher age range? And are they, as an employer or a contractor, are we able to help them figure that out? Are they struggling with that? What's our role there in helping them?
I'm going to let Tamara answer that one.
Well, first, what do you mean by higher age range? Are we looking over 65? The majority of the drivers who are over 65 actually took a leave of absence back in March and have been out. And we actually had quite a few who chose to retire for safety purposes. I would say the majority of our drivers are probably in their 40s. Of course, I might just be remembering, how young we all were when I started here. But I'd say the majority are in their 40s. We have a lot of drivers who worked here over 20 years, but they started when they were, 25. We don't have a lot over the 65 who are still actively working. So I'm kind of hoping they'll go back to occupation. I would like to see all of our drivers and mechanics who want to be vaccinated get it done as quickly as possible.
Okay, any other questions on this? I guess we should also see if anybody from the members of the public want to comment on this.
I was just going to say that, Chair Warner. You have one hand raised from Teamsters Local 70.
Yeah, good afternoon again. So I can chime in a little bit on some of the director's questions. So as far as the vaccine, so we have been pushing both regionally, statewide, and nationally for essential workers to kind of get a higher priority in the line. Unfortunately, Tony is right. Governor Newsom changed directions on us last week. So if you guys have any influence with Governor, definitely chime in, as we have been. But everybody is chiming in on why they feel they should be priority. Our position has been, we have people, drivers interacting with the public every day, different aspects of the public. So they absolutely should be a priority. Unfortunately, they've been bumped down. And Tamara's right. Most of our old, more senior drivers have taken a leave. And in a lot of ways, I'm very happy, because if they all were working, we probably would have had more layoffs because there really is not enough hours to go around. So I've worked with the management there. We've worked through a few different situations and tried to balance it out as far as work needs compared to people who needed to be off. So I'm also happy to answer any questions if anybody has any of me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to comment on item 10?
No, but I'll just add really quick with regards to COVID. Rich is completely right, and there have been a lot of people advocating and so on. But Alameda County is potentially, and I know that they've been in conversation even with, they are potentially will be opening a mass vaccination. So if you know of individuals that have not signed up on the Alameda County website, a lot of individuals are being able to go to their providers, so like Stanford Health, Sutter Health, Kaiser, and until we can potentially open up our big mass vaccination at the fairgrounds.
Well, thank you. Just along that, I know we've got the county trying to figure it out, as well as the local Tri-Valley cities, local point of distribution. So we'll be making progress, but I think we're a couple of weeks away from that. So I think bottom line is we all got to be kind of patient for a little bit while longer while the various people kind of figure out how to do this. And then they'll eventually call in Amazon and they'll get it right. So any other comments on item 10? Okay, with that, let's go to item 11, Executive Director's Report.
All right, I'll keep this brief because I think we touched on a lot of the things that are in the report, and just some of the highlights would obviously be some of our capital projects that we didn't talk about today. Your shared autonomous vehicle project, I think it's worth noting that we have a $2.7 million request in at MTC to fund the phase 2 for that project. So I'll probably be reaching out to certain board members to provide some help with that request as we get moving along. The Dublin parking garage is staff's really spending a lot of time on that project as we are looking to help them get a design build contractor on board and to the county commission for approval. And then the Santa Rita project, a lot of you have been following that, upgrading those bus stops in Santa Rita and Pleasanton to Rapid. And by the time we meet next month, that project should be completed. So we're pretty excited to get those stops up and functioning, and we'll be looking for some level of a ribbon cutting. So we'll work closely with the board, and in particular, Vice Chair Brown and Director Narum. So a lot of things going on with the Valley Link. I'll kind of save that for another day, but basically the EIR is coming to a conclusion, which is a huge milestone for the project. And at your next board meeting, I think that we'll bring to you some significant discussion in regard to the Valley Link project. As you know, the administration for that project runs through LAFTA for the Valley Link board, and we have some scenarios where some of our key program and project managers are leaving the BART organization, and they're critical to the project. They provide really the day-to-day management, and so we'll have some options and to talk to the LAFTA board in regard to how to keep them involved in the project moving forward. Currently, you're seconding them from BART, and so with the end of their employment with BART, that would need to change. So we're a little early on any details with that, but I just wanted to let the board know the next time you meet, we'll probably have a more lengthy discussion on that project and the folks working on it.
Okay, is that it for item 11?
That is it.
Okay, any questions from the directors on 11? Okay, with that, we'll move on to matters initiated by the board of directors. Does anyone have a matters they would like to bring up? Okay, I have one myself. I've asked Michael to set up a meeting with Gillig to talk about hydrogen powered buses. And the reason I did that, I was in a recent ACTC meeting and hydrogen came up for the port, and then even in the U.S. Conference of Mayors, hydrogen was mentioned. And so I think there's an opportunity for the Tri-Valley cities, the county, and more broadly to think about hydrogen. Perhaps we could get a demonstration project for wheels. And so I've asked for that meeting, and I would ask that that we invite the mayors of the cities as well as Supervisor Halbert. See if anybody wants to attend, but it would, would obviously be a Zoom meeting with the executives at Gillig to just fold that in. But I think more broadly, we as mayors and the supervisors should be talking about hydrogen and how we think about it, because we're in a lot of different meetings in which it shows up. So if we had some coordination on that, it could be helpful. So is that
Can I just,
yes.
if all three mayors and the supervisor are in that meeting, that's a quorum of this board? Is that an issue in any way?
I hadn't thought about it, but good question.
If you attend a public meeting and you only participate in the meeting and do not discuss amongst yourselves, you're okay. But a specially called meeting or something that's closed to the public, you do need to be aware of that. Hopefully that's helpful.
So is that it? We can do it, but we have to be careful?
Yeah, I think if it's I mean, I guess it would be if it could be held as a public meeting open to the general public, then you could, but simply a meeting with, a quorum of the board and then other individuals, that would need to be noticed.
Perhaps, if I may, we'd like to invite them to one of our meetings instead.
That's an alternative.
Well, I think were we going to do a tour, Michael? Per that email that you sent me earlier?
That is the email that Bob is referring to, where I've just reached out initially to the three mayors that are on the board in regard to your, whether you'd like to meet with the CEO of Gillig.
Okay.
Have an
Well,
initial feeler.
I emailed you back, so, okay.
All right, let's
I'd
figure
say
out how to.
COVID times, if there's a tour, we normally notice that as a board meeting.
Okay, well, maybe we can make it fewer, but whatever you think is best, Michael, I'll go with that. But I do think beyond this board, it would be worth us thinking about hydrogen, because we have our climate plan, action plans. So there are other auspices under which we could convene this. So it doesn't have to be through wheels. We could do it just because our position as mayors and the supervisors. So let's figure out it's the best way to do it. But I'm not inclined to want to make it a big to do about it.
Hmm.
So with that, any other matters? All right, I imagine people are ready for us to adjourn. This is you started out, Michael, saying this is going to be a short meeting, but it didn't kind of happen. It's one of the longer ones I've imagined. So anyway,
Thank you.
okay, so we're going to adjourn to March 1st meeting. Good night.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.